Good afternoon, everybody. Coach Kurt here with the Elvis Collie Fight Team doing another episode of 2 FMA-Nerds talk about stuff. So today I brought on a bit of a legend, Professor Super Dan Anderson. He's a very accomplished martial artist, has been at this for a little while, so I'll let him tell his story because he's been, like I said, he's been at this for a while. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Professor, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. I've had my fair share of coffee. I've had lunch, and now I'm ready to talk about you, me, and everything else.
Awesome. So we'll jump back to your short life story, but we were having a great little conversation prior to going live about generational change. So, want to continue that thought?
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about, some of the people in NSI and, Kelly Wharton's organization, how you've got some really heavy hitters in there. And I say that with admiration, because the thing is that, what we're discussing on society change is that, what we've got, if nothing else in Filipino martial arts, but I think in Oriental martial arts, is that you have it first where it was developed for, let's say, warfare. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now the warfare dies down and you get into a tribal type of thing, village against village, and this is the village safety, etc. And then things become a little bit more civilized. So now what you've got is you've got a situation where you either have street fights or organized duels. But as civilization gets more, or as cultures become more, quote unquote, civilized, the acceptance of random violence or even planned violence becomes less and less and less and less. So now you slide into, let's say, the sport arena. And then from there, it descends into, let's say you're just training to be training, or you're doing it because this is on a par with soccer or baseball, et cetera. And so here's where you can get a lot of the keyboard warriors talking about this, that, and the next thing. But it's easy to do that because you're shielded by X amount of laws and legalities and so forth. And one of the things that I'd mentioned was that when I was a kid, you can get into an honest fist fight. You could be out there, boom, you hit the person in the nose, the guy's nose bleeds, they break it up. And if you're old enough, you guys had a beer later on. If not, you either liked the kid or you didn't like the kid, or. These days, I can stare harshly at you, and you can have me actually arrested for assault, or at the very least harassment, and have the police come by my door and tell me not to do something else. So the arts, to me, have also degenerated in that fashion. And I'm not going to hold myself up as the hard knock street guy, but things were a little bit more head knocking back when I was a kid. So that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because talking about looking at somebody wrong. I mean, the fact is, depending upon which culture you're at, I mean, the way you look is a challenge. I mean, smiling, baring teeth. I mean, this is all just animal tribal mentality. And what is interesting now in this idea of cancel culture, online culture, there's immediate access, but lack of reciprocity and accountability, is you run into situations where like streamers get swatted for talking smack on a video game. And it's such a odd dynamic of what technology and networking has done for us, but it's also regressed us back to this kind of infantile state of being, because one of the things that I am constantly addressing is this issue about disproportionate response to violence or perceived violence. Because, like you said, back in the day, you could get in a fight. I mean, I've got my fair share of street fights and schoolyard fights and everything else. And you could just sort it out in the schoolyard. And again, the threat of violence maintains a certain level of not professionalism, but politeness against the whole, like, why is a warrior polite? Because they don't want to draw the sword. So it's that. I mean, there's a lot of those cultural cliches, but now, I mean, the disproportionate response to violence, you run in a situation where there's a perceived threat of violence or just a perceived offense, and you run into a kid shooting up a school. So it's, and I think a lot of that.
The thing is that number one, manners have dropped out in terms of any kind of societal teaching. I think in schools, I really pity the poor teachers because the teachers are hamstrung. I mean, I was a wise guy in, what was it, the 3rd grade, and I got spanked in the damned hall. This happened in the 5th grade. Same thing. I had knocked it off after that because, there was cause, there was effect. And so, you get, the teachers being hamstrung, and I'm not into, beating children and this and that, although I've been known to make jokes about it, but, I'm not into that sort of thing. But the thing is that people need to learn that there is cause and effect. These days, there's cause, but there's no effect. So you can, in fact, let's be hilarious right now. So you introduced me as Professor Super Dan. Oh, man, I can get on the keyboard. There is no such thing as a Professor Super Dan. There's a Professor Dan, but there's a Super Dan. But there's, are you sure his name is even Dan? You've got to be, I mean, it can be so taken out of proportion that it's just, it's really unbelievable. And you get this sort of thing happening, and especially with my manners. And what happens is respect for life diminishes. And this is where you get, the schoolyard kids that have been hyped up on video games and whatever the latest drug is, and going boom, 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 because this type of thing hasn't been taught in the schools, and the diminishing importance of the church. So we're in a very interesting time.
What's interesting is, actually, I'll just go back up. Free speech is a beautiful thing. As a veteran, free speech is a beautiful thing. Now, free speech does not mean free from consequence. So, like, the circumstance that you run into is, if I'm going to say and do something that's going to result in violence to me or somebody else, I probably shouldn't do it. But like you said, there is no effect to that cause, and it is a problem. And this is where there is a bit of a debate within the martial arts community consistently between artists, athletes, and legit warriors. So, and there's that odd dynamic of what is actually the cause and effect of what you're doing. And we were talking a little bit about that beforehand.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, back in the ancient days when martial arts was used for honest to goodness, either warriors or self-defense, there wasn't the idea of, athletes, sportsmen, warriors, etc. And you get into the United States, it gets really split up. And, so you have artists, you have body artists who people like how the movement goes and so forth. Fair enough. You get athletes, you get top flight competitive athletes. You get guys who either go into or come out of the service, and they're a real deal guys. And each has its place. But for one to, and this is the interesting thing, for one to overtly criticize the other for not sharing or adopting their same perspective. This is like, I'm sorry, you enter two human beings into the mix and you're going to get two different perspectives. And one guy, might be completely, utterly real deal. Another person might want to be an artiste. And if that's what floats your boat, it's all valid within certain constraints. If you're an artiste, don't go telling people that you're teaching street survival. And if you're a real deal guy, you don't put the shingle out on your school. Sam Hill's element of death. Learn to kill somebody in 6 weeks. You know, so you got to have parameters. But and then the other thing is, and I was just remembering this now. Did you ever watch the movie Stripes?
Yeah, Bill Murray.
Well, everybody's got to take Sergeant Hulka's advice. Lighten up, Francis. Because everybody's at liberty to take themselves too damn seriously. Why? Because you don't have to prove it. You know, there'd be a lot less yap and a lot less taken seriously if you had to prove it. And that's what I say there. So there you go.
The things that I have found by way of my time in martial arts and also my military service and just in general is that people who have done don't need to prove it. The time and test is there. Killers recognize killers. And the fact is, the unsatisfied man who is unaccomplished and who's trying to find validation
has the biggest mouth.
Has the biggest mouth. And they're the problem. When the fact is, they just need to chill out. Just go and get the reps. Go and get time in the ring. Go do the thing and chill out. Because the thing that I've also found with working with legit killers is the fact that these guys have a great capacity for empathy because they understand the cost of a lack of empathy. Because having touched violence quite a bit, violence has touched them back, and they have a greater appreciation for life thereafter and the beauty of it and the protection of it. Again, the reason why we fight is based out of love. The why changes, but realistically, the why is love. We love what we do. We love to protect those whom we want to protect and whom we love. It's just that continuum is really what I have found is the consistent thing for people who actually legitimately from the moral high ground, I'll put it that way, by bond and badge and oath, those who have the righteous usage of violence, they do it out of love and compassion because they're the ones standing before the dark so others don't have to.
Right. And let's add one more thing into the mix. They have nothing to prove.
Yeah.
The real deal guys, the ones I've been around and sat and chatted with are some of the friendliest, nicest guys on the planet. And, and they have, you know, there isn't any swelled chest thing or swelled head thing because they've been there, they've done it, they know the cause, they know the effect, they come through the other side, and they have nothing to prove to you, me, and most importantly, themselves. And so they're very, very secure within what they've done. And then let me take a sideways here, or an analogous type of thing. You know, the guys who I've seen in the ring, you know, because most people know that I was a national karate champion, world karate champion, and so forth. Those are the guys who had the greatest camaraderie. Those are the guys who would help other people. Those were the guys that would, you know, wouldn't get on this great big bragging streak or acting like, I'm gonna whoop you, etc. Because been there, done that. We've exchanged the lumps. We've proved ourselves very secure within what we do and what we've done. Well, same thing with the real deal guys. And this is one of the things where we were talking about Kelly Warden's Water and Steel.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that really impressed me about the instructors or instruction there. It's like each individual had nothing to prove and everything to share. And, you know, I like to call him my little brother, even though he's just huge, but I have a particular affinity for Bob Anderson. And, you know, we were chatting, I said, boy, I wouldn't got it on the wrong side of him. But man, do I feel comfortable around him and just as a human being. And so, yeah, it's my addition on that is, you know, everything exactly what you said, plus they are secure with themselves. And I tell you, in anything that you do, if you have security within yourself, man, you are so far ahead of, unfortunately, many people on the planet. And I think it's a wonderful thing to have that.
Yeah, it's the confidence through capability. Because again, the unsatisfied man is the untested, unblooded, unhappy. They find themselves comparing their value and their worth to that of others. And again, at the end of life, it's yours. It's your journey, your experiences. And
Yeah.
when you're blaming everybody else, that's a victim. And so
Or if or the same thing if you prop yourself up
mhm,
on the denigration of others, whether overt or covert.
yeah.
And that's something that I will see here and there. Somebody will use, let's say, I like to use the word perspective. Okay, you can have, let's say, facts. Okay, I went to the Rolling Stones concert in 1965. Let's say that's a fact, but then you've got your perspective on it, which is, well, Rolling Stones, they were young, they're into blues. This is really cool. Or you can use spin. Well, I was at the Rolling Stones concert, but compared to the Beatles, Mick and Keith and Brian and those guys, they just aren't George, John, Paul, Ringo, and it's just too bad for them.
Mhm.
So you've got perspective, you've got fact, but you got perspective, you've got spin. And so one of the things that I've noticed about the real deal guys is they don't spin. They'll tell it like it is, more often than not, in a very congenial manner. So it won't even be like an in-your-face type of perspective thing. It's like, okay, this is the way it is in my viewpoint. Bang, you like it? Okay, you don't like it? Fine. But none of this prop myself by like stepping on you, whether,
Mhm.
like I said, overtly or covertly. I say more covertly these days, but where I'm getting at is
Yeah, and there's also the situation with instructors is this awesome by association that one that they're the old man, their grandmaster did this, that, and the other back in the day. Therefore, you're that by extension, or their student happens to be this, that, and the other, and therefore you're awesome by extension. And it's an odd dynamic because you're your own. You may be you're a conduit of your own information and experience, but the fact is you're not the other person. It's their journey, their process, their capability that they took that information, made it their own, and did something great with it. And I feel, I talked about in the modern Arnis line, the art within your art. It's a tricky subject for certain circles within modern Arnis.
I'll explain that very easily to you, but
Yeah.
continue.
But yeah, the make it your own is that it's your body. Fight and figure it out what works for you. So
Well,
regardless of what it is. Yeah.
yeah. Well, let me start from there.
Yeah.
And now here's the interesting thing: is that every one of us who are making the art our own are doing exactly what Professor Remy did. Professor Remy learned the family style. Okay,
Hmm.
his dad, Jose Ibanco Presas, was teaching Philippine guerrillas.
Hmm.
Okay, he's teaching the art of the blade. All
Hmm.
right, so little Remy, he spies on dad, goes out, cuts out a switch, starts beating on all the leaves that he can find. His grandfather catches him, and instead of getting in trouble, says, "Do you want me to teach you?" "Oh yes, yeah, how much do you teach?" So he does this. And then at age 14, he and a cousin of his go on an excursion across a body of water. They go somewhere around Cebu. They run into Rodolfo Moncal. And he's a Balintawak player. He's a left-handed Balintawak player, but he's a Balintawak player. And he starts learning Balintawak. Now, as he goes up the ladder of instructors, he gets together with Anchan Bakun.
Hmm.
Now, here's the interesting thing is that if you look at any of the lineages of Balintawak, they all have a look about them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pow. Yep.
Bobby T has a way of looking that looks a bit like Nick Elazar, that looks
Hmm.
like all these different guys, the Teoville guys, and etc. Bobby Tabamina, they all have a certain look. Okay,
Hmm.
this is what I call body contouring.
Hmm.
Okay, you shape the body to perform the mechanics in thus and such fashion, and it has a look about it. Okay. If you look at Calis Illustrissimo, hey, I can tell a Calis Illustrissimo player in 1.5 seconds, and that is if I'm on a slow day. I can tell a Balintawak player 1.5 seconds if I haven't had my morning cup of coffee.
Yep.
Okay. Now here's the fascinating thing. So Remy trains with Balintawak, goes up the ladder, trains with Enchon. I think in my book I noticed it was like a total of 7 years. You watch Remy move. He does not look like Bobby T. He does not look like Teofil. He does not look like Nick Alazar. He does not look like the rest of the clan. Now, the point I'm going to make here is that, okay, so he looks like Remy Presses. He gets the fighting tactics. He gets the skills. He gets the concepts of Balintawak Eskrima, connects them with what he learned as a kid, connects them with what he learns along the way. Because he would tell me, yeah, he would go to this town or whatever, and he would watch whoever the hot dog was to see what the guy would do, right? Then he would challenge him. So they would have a duel. They would have some sort of match, and he would beat the guy. But he would always steal the guy's technique and add it to his toolbox. Now, the old man comes to the United States. And one of the things that he didn't do with the rest of us, that all the other FMA instructors did, so if you watch Leo Garon, okay, the Bahalana guys, they all look like Bahalana guys. Angel Cabales, oh man, you can tell a Serrata guy just like that because they have a way of moving.
The twirl.
Yeah. And the deep knees and the sharp stance shift. Okay. Professor Remy didn't do that. He taught modern Arnis, but he did not create a situation where he enforced a body contouring. So if you were a Taekwondo guy, your basics look kind of like Taekwondo with Arnis blended together. If you did natural spirit, okay, you end up looking like Kelly. If you're an American Freestyle Karate guy, you end up looking like me. Lee Lowry or Brian Zawolinsky, okay, they had Kempo base. Hey, Errol, how you doing? And so the thing is that, okay, where does the art within your art come in? All right, let's get a little bit of history here. I'm going to be doing an interview with some of the old gangsters. Mike Raplogel, a guy from Los Angeles. And the funny thing is, the guys, okay, I've done an interview with the Portland connection. I will be doing the interview with the out-of-town connection. I'm one of the longest training modern Arnis guys, continuously training modern Arnis guys in the United States. These guys predate me. Oh, wow. Even if only by a year. Oh, this is going to be good. But so Mike Raplogel, he's at a photo shoot. He writes articles and he's training with the old man. And he makes the offhand comment, oh, you mean it's kind of like, oh, wow, it's kind of like an art within your art. Light bulb goes on over Professor Remy's head. This is about 83. Next thing you know is Black Belt Magazine. The title is An Art, not the art, An Art Within Your Art. You go through the entire article. Not once does it quote Professor Remy saying the art within your art. Okay, now, it has been postulated by somebody who's vocal on the scene that, okay, the art within your art is modern artists taught so that you can get better at insert parent art here. Okay. We will teach you this so that you can get better at your Tang Sudo. We will teach you this to get better at your Kenpo Karate or your this or that or the next thing. Now, here's the fascinating thing. Never once, and I don't know about the rest of the country, so I'm not going to talk about the rest of the country. I'll talk about Portland, Oregon. I'll talk about Tacoma. Never once did Professor Remy ever say to me, Danny, if you get good at modern Arnis, this will make your karate very, very good. No! He wasn't touching my karate. national champion, world-class athlete. No, he taught me modern Arnis. And what happened, not only with me, but Janisa Cruzy had mentioned this in the interview, the Portland connection that I did, was that he would teach something and we would have our own epiphanies as to how this would relate to our art. So instead of him saying, "Oh, this will make your what is this? Your taekwondo. It'll make your taekwondo very, very good." No. He would teach us the art. He would teach us how we would, how he taught modern Arnis. And then we would have the light bulbs coming on over our heads. We would mention it to him. And I think that that is where the art within your art came from. Most of the guys in the United States he taught already had an existing skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that existing skill set set you up to learn what he did? I will only speak for me. Okay. As a national competitor, okay, during the golden age of karate, I had to learn how to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
I was right hand dominant. Okay. I fight in the internationals in 1972. My right hand is broken. My left hand has all the skills of a blue belt. So I decide I'm going to counterpunch Byung Yu with my left hand because I know he's going to come at me. I'm watching. Bam, he takes off. I set to fire. I'm about halfway in my punch. The chest hits me in, his punch hits me in the chest like somebody had thrown a spear. Bang! Blasted me. I came back. I started learning how to use my left hand. I started learning how to use my left leg. I start watching people. I start getting to a point to where I'm very well-rounded. I can have a good command of my body. Then I meet Professor Remy. Okay. Then I start learning modern Arnis. So I already have this training. Plus, I'm also, and it's great. You've got the title here, 2 FMA nerds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was a martial arts nerd. I had studied a tremendous amount of other martial arts. Now, let me interject this one thing here because noted karate historian Kenji Tokitsu, he had stated that he had studied over 50 styles of karate. And then he makes the point, he goes, now, there's a difference between studying and training in. He had only trained in a couple of stuff, but he had examined the principles, the physical body motions of many, many other styles. Okay, well, I had studied a broad range of martial arts so that when I see Professor Remy, he says, well, you must angle, you must go this. Oh, yeah, okay, this is like in yada yada book or whatever. Maybe I hadn't been trained in it, but I already had a conceptual knowledge of this. So that modern Arnis came very, very easy to me. And, Fred King, he had mentioned to me one time, says, what, you must learn this by osmosis. No, I was a voracious student. My teacher, Lauren Christensen, who's very well known in the real deal world, he said, Dan's a natural learner. I don't know how much of a natural learner I was, but I know I had tremendous desire and I paid attention to detail.
Yep.
From there, about 5 years into it, and then I'll get back to, that's an interesting question. FMA is the duct tape in the martial arts world. I might address that. You can go bring that to me because I'm always willing to chat. But about 5 years into it, Professor Remy started getting ill. He had gout. And he survived that and so forth. But for a while, we're thinking, we might lose the guy. So at that point in time, I did something pretty daring, which was I stopped listening to him. And I started feeling him and I started watching him like a hawk. And that is when my learning progression kind of went way up, because if I could feel and I could watch, okay, I could work on replicating what he did. Okay, so one might be able to see the core of Professor Remy's movement in me, but if you feel what I am doing, that will be a little bit closer within my own body size and strength and so forth to what you'd feel like with Professor Remy. And none of us have the whole package. I don't think the old man wanted us to get the whole package because he wanted to spread Filipino culture and get it across to us because he loves seeing people learn. One of the things that Barbara Bones had mentioned in the interview that I did was that one of his strengths was he could zero in on anybody and he would validate even somebody's tiniest incremental skill rise. He would stop the whole seminar and he'd go, "Oh, look at George. George, he is doing the move. He has got it." And the rest of us are going, "George sucks, man. This is really bad." But what the old man saw was that the guy had just progressed just the tiniest bit. And wham, he was on. And you would see George at the next seminar and the next seminar and the next seminar because he was so validating. Well, what he saw was the guy absorbing. And when you go, the art within your art, okay, I'm also a definitions nerd. Okay.
Words matter. Semantics is important. Yep.
You're possessive. I point at you and I go, "I don't think I have seen your shirt." Okay. This is directly relating to you. So the art within your art to me becomes the individual expression. And I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Kelly, myself, Brian, Chuck, Ken, Bruce, Bram. Each one of us has our own viewpoints. Each one of us has our own methods of moving and taking what's important to ourselves. Therein lies the art within your art. And it is so blasted singular that, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but you gotta ask me other questions or I'll keep yammering about the art within the art. But I just said what I said.
There's a couple of things in there. So for one, from an education standpoint, kinesthetic awareness or kinesthetic intelligence, people who are good, people who are athletic tend to be able to pick up athletic things. So that's the thing that I find when people are able to learn another martial arts because they've made those connections between body movements that are familiar. Because again, the human frame is the same. What differs is our experience, our process of understanding, and getting past the programming of curriculum preference and just in that messy process of like, this is this because of terminology. When the fact is it an inside forearm block? Is it paddle suit? Is it this, that, and the other? I mean, the fact is movement is still movement.
It's this way going to that way.
Yeah. So we get hung up
or vice versa.
Yeah, we get hung up on the terminology. And the thing that I find also with, and I made the comment earlier that because this gets brought up, is that FMA is the duct tape of the martial arts world. Because in the same argument, talking about what GM Remy did, is that he was able to infuse and make connections about improving your base martial art by adding FMA as a connecting art. And this is where I've heard that argument back and forth, which is, it's interesting, but it's incomplete in my mind.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things which I think you and I are parallel on, but I'll explain it in a different way. The only last thing that I would add to somebody who, in terms of kinesthetic awareness, is there's a word called proprioception, which is a very highfalutin term for knowing where the parts of your body are without looking at them. I had to have one of my students who was a professor of kinesiology explain it to me because she was going, "Oh yeah, proprioception is Susan, what's that? Well, it's just knowing where the parts of your body are without looking at them. Just thank you, being very simple. Now, the thing about FMA, and I think one of the real defining characteristics of FMA is the flow.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the first thing, and it is not just relegated only to modern Arnis, because any FMA player has got the flow. Otherwise, you're doing something that may be reminiscent of it, or but it's not FMA, in my opinion. Now, the thing about the flow is that, and I'll talk about Professor Remy, and I won't talk about anybody else. Although Guru Dan, I think I could say the same thing about Guru Dan, but Professor Remy was a master of motion. He was a master of movement. So you get somebody who is motion inclined. Okay. This, rather than a knife hand block, is going to be, well, the left hand retreated backwards and then it came forwards. Oh, really? You mean this could be a bitch slap? Bang, bang. This could be a parry and a knife hand strike. This could be starting to cover. This hand could close up and you could gut punch the person. It could be whatever, because it's a motion-based type of thing. Now, I know in karate, and I'll speak only for karate, but yeah, there is a technical thing. Oh, knife hand block. Okay, cool. High block. Is that anything else? No. That's high block. Are you sure, sir? Yes. Well, this resembles an illegal move in football. Boom, into the neck. No. It's high block. Yes, sir. And FMA, from what I've seen, with the exception of teaching it to students so they will remember a particular move by a particular thing, is not quite so restrictive that way. Your brush, grab, and strike. Well, yeah, that's trapping hands. That's 1, 2, 3. That's brush, parry, blah, 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 blah. But in the long run, we have 3 individual movements. We have this one went this way, this one which crossed over and went this way, and the other one, the opposite direction. What can that be? Well, I can see a forearm bar, I can see a neck lock, and I can see a throw right away from just those moves. And, so yeah, FMA can be a duct tape. I think FMA can be more of opening the shutters and letting the sunshine in. Because all of a sudden it's, this can be that too. And Professor Remy, you can do that also. That's good. So, and it's interesting because there was an interview that we did on that Dean Franco did, and Kelly had mentioned something which just totally blew my mind, which was he ended up taking everything that he knew and scooting it off to the side, and then used modern Arnis concepts and so forth to decipher this. And it's like, whoa, nobody throws away their parent arts to use another art to decipher and see the links, etc. Well, that's what Kelly did. And I haven't done quite that, but I've seen where modern Arnis has enriched my martial arts. I don't know what it's done for my American karate, but I know that, when I'll tell students this, you'll see 2 or 3 things. Number 1, there's curriculum. There's what I teach. There's what you're supposed to do. Then you'll see what Dan does. Don't worry about that, because that's what Dan does. Then you'll see what Dan's working on. Don't worry about that either, because that's my journey. And so, quite often I'll get a student going, sir, well, you were doing da da da, but you were teaching da da. Yeah, yeah. Do what I said. Don't do what I do because I'm working on this. And that's where like the art within your art comes in, circling right around back to that. And then, if it turns into something that I can teach to my students and teach better, oh, good, I'll include that. But Dan's journey is different than the curriculum that I feel is best for the students at the time.
What's interesting, because with a lot of systems and styles, that you have people who can do the curriculum, that they can regurgitate the curriculum, they can speak verbatim, they can tell you that this is the curriculum, they're the masters of the basics. But the problem you run into is, can they expound, add, deduct, deduce, interpret that from the curriculum? Because this is the issue of, are we preserving the art, or are we innovating the arts and interjecting new lifeblood? Because the fact is, the art is consistently evolving as you're adding more input and more experience into the overall community. So this idea of preserving the art, well, or unless you're doing it for the sake of a cultural nuance, a historical approach, you're trying to maintain for the base curriculum, as typical what you see with the Japanese arts. I'll use Shotokan, for example, because I'm a black belt in Shotokan, is that they want to say, this is Shotokan, this is distinct, this is what it is. It's a snapshot in time. There is no evolution, because this is what it is, which is great for the sake of maintaining, like, this is a distinct system that we want to master in that. But when it comes to this issue about being a more well-rounded martial artist, a little more well-rounded individual, are we slaves to the curriculum, thereby clones of the progenitor? Or are we able to input stuff from our own experience and understand and actually innovate or improve upon? Because that's a tricky one. People get really touchy about improving and creating new stuff, because that's not what the old man did.
Let me give you an interesting slant on what you're saying, and that is, there's what I call finding your own voice, and there are certain progressions to finding your own voice. Now, when one learns any martial art, okay, anybody who's been in any kind of fights knows that fights and self-defense situations are chaotic. You have the physical, you have the emotional, you have the hormonal, you've got the environmental, you've got, pardon the term, but you've got a shitstorm. You've got stuff in the blender. Okay, now somebody starts to learn something. That becomes their stable datum or their stable reference point to handle the confusion of the chaos. Hey, Chris, how you doing? So you've got somebody who, let's say, starts, like you said, Shotokan karate. When I learned, I trained in a Korean system that was pre-unification Taekwondo that was called Kong Sudo. Okay. The same ideograms for Karate Do. It wasn't until Tsutomu Oshima's translation of Karate Do Kyohan that I figured out that what we did was a Koreanized Shotokan. The katas were the same. I did Shotokan karate, Korean style. Okay. Now, so you got this chaos, that's survival, it's self-defense, etc. And you have the one thing, bang, that you now sort out the confusions of all the other stuff. Okay, that becomes your frame of reference. That becomes your stable datum. Okay, stage one. Some people never get out of that stable datum. Okay, I have no problem with that. No harm, no foul, because however the art applies to you is how it applies to you. Again, going back to the art within your art. Well, maybe your stable datum becomes the art within your art. And that's it. However, the next stage of progression, if somebody's progressing, is that outside their art, they go, ooh, spinning back kick. How cool is that? Back fist. We never did back fist. I'll add that too. So you start adding to this stable datum. Okay. Then you get to a point where there's certain things you start detracting from the stable reference point. And it's like, okay, well, for fits and giggles, let's say foot sweep, which I adore foot sweeps. But let's say, you're little, you can't work foot sweeps, and you're skinny as a twig. You haven't got the right balance, and you kind of go, phooey, to heck with that. I'm not doing foot sweeps. And you start tossing certain things out. And then you get to a point, and it's interesting, where so you've added things from the stable datum, you've subtracted things from the stable datum. Then you get into your own version, Dan's Shotokan, Kurt's Shotokan. And yeah, we've got the same katas where we've modified the katas. We've got this technique, and it's your Shotokan. Well, you're almost there. At some point, you get to a point where you could really give two hoots to a holler about what anybody else says, because you are stable in your own frame of reference.
Yep.
And you have done what I've called, you found your own voice. Now, It's really funny because Paulo was typing up something, and he was expounding on a particular viewpoint. And I went through the back channels, and I went, Paulo, it sounds like somebody's finding his own voice. And I just left it at that.
Yep.
And he hit me back with a smiley. And it was like, okay, he knows what I'm talking about. So those individuals who wish to carry on an attempt to innovate, etc., and with me being the old American freestylist, one of the first guy on the West Coast, I wish in the country, but it didn't happen. But me being the first guy on the West Coast to have his own style of karate, which did not have a reference to an existing Japanese or Okinawan karate style, so you couldn't call it, let's say, Peter Urban's USA Goju. He predated me, but he clung to the Goju name. And there was others that did that. On the East Coast, there was a fellow by the name of Karim Abdallah. He created the KA system. He didn't reference it to a pre-existing Oriental style. And damn it, he beat me to it. So I've had people that go, oh yeah, you're the first guy that did American karate. No, Kareem Abdallah beat me to it. He called it the KA system. And so if I had a hat right here, I'd take it off to him. I'll have to symbolically take off a hat to him.
Just the carry back, you'll be right.
There you go. But so if you're an innovator and you want to move your art forward, good, you'll proceed to a point to where you find your own voice. But if you want to remain a traditionalist, I will also put on a different hat and I will take it off to you, because that's what speaks to you. And if that's what speaks to you, in my opinion, it's very valid. Okay. You can get into, now here's the interesting thing. Let's go back to modern Arnis. Professor Remy didn't body contour people. He didn't have an established belt by belt curriculum. I mean, we're talking shit's already in the blender, and it's what kind of shake that you want to make is what happens. So for anybody to stand up and go, well, gosh, I'm doing the real art because I ... insert whatever qualifications here, has missed the point. Has utterly missed the point and is speaking from either, I don't know, I'll get in trouble for this, either ego, inexperience. I mean, I can honestly say that, I had a look at my art being thus as such because I was at a level of, what's the term? Maturity, or lack thereof, to express this particular viewpoint. Okay. Now, let's see. How old are you? You said what, 30 something?
38.
Good. So in November, I will be in the martial arts 58 years.
Congratulations, young man.
28 years up on you, son. But the thing is I matured to the point where, okay, good. A, I found my own voice. B, especially in modern Arnis, which was an innovation in and of itself. And I really have to emphasize that because I was there before he met Wally J. His locks were big and they were circular. He meets Wally J, and all of a sudden everything goes, oh yeah. The pain turned on a heck of a lot faster. And he was the eternal student. He was very much like Guru Dan. He was the eternal student. And so he innovated. So how can you lock down to an approach or a viewpoint? Because he was also teaching people who had a number of perspectives, from previous training. You can't lock it down to a curriculum. But it's funny. You watch me, Brian, Roland Rivera, Bruce Chu, Kelly Warden, you'll see a core.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see a core of activity, movement. But there's no way Kelly's going to look like me. There's no way I'm going to look like Kelly.
There's only one Kelly. There's only one Dan.
Boom. There's only one Brian, one Roland, one Bruce.
Yeah, exactly.
One Bram, etc. And you get a tree trunk and you get the branches. There's where that is.
Yeah, basically, and this is the advocacy that for everybody who's watching, because often I voice things in the comment section in other podcasts in general for those who are afraid and hesitant to ask the obvious or just even the ignorant questions for fear of ridicule and just getting piled on like you should know this stuff. But here's the fact. People are allowed to adopt, adapt, and make things their own because, one, their body can only do certain things due to limitation, preference, or just overall capability. So, like for my case,
now you're calling me old. Okay.
My case, both my knees are shot, my ankles are shot from shenanigans in the Army. And when I was doing the USTU stuff for pre-Olympic qualifiers, I could do all the aerial stuff. I did the XMA things, but approaching 40 and 100 pounds heavier than I was back then, I'm not doing any jumping kicks, especially with an ankle I've had 4 surgeries on. Not a chance.
See, with me, with all the super dance stuff, I haven't stretched in I don't know how long. If I'm going to kick you in the head, I'm sweeping you out first.
Exactly. I'm going to kick you on the ground. It's the whole... what is it? The Billy Jack thing, where I'm going to kick you upside the head, but bring you down. No, that's major pain. I'm going to kick you upside the face. Yeah. But point being is,
anyway, continue. Yeah.
Point being is we're allowed to adjust our art to suit our needs and our capability, because unless we're being slaves to the curriculum, because here's the thing about curriculums are important for teaching to governmental bodies. I'll say for the military, for example, because I was a combatives instructor in the military. We had a strict curriculum that we had to teach by standard across the board. Now, we added stuff based upon experience. I had a lot of FMA to the combatives program that I taught for my unit, but the point being is there is a standardized curriculum for a government. For one, you're dealing with contracts. 2, you're dealing with replication. 3, you're dealing with all these things that be standardized across the board so there isn't any variance. And this is the trick the trouble that I find for the curriculum-based systems that are easily sold to agencies and bodies that will regulate it versus this interpretive, innovative system. They're like, I'm just kind of doing stuff because that's what I'm doing for today. And how do I sell that to an agency that's going to be utilizing this across the board for a wide variety of people, especially when they got a short amount of time? And this is where the dynamic of innovation, art within your art, create your own thing versus solid curriculum butt heads all the time. Because what are you doing with that martial art?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Okay, curriculum is necessary. Curriculum is necessary. You got to lay a foundation. But once the foundation is laid, there you go. Now, I'm going to take a left-hand turn here. Chris Chu has mentioned here, I'm going to read this strange question. Do you think modern artists can ever be finalized? I feel like you guys all say Professor made the art be consistently flowing, adapting, and evolving. I think I asked what I'm thinking correctly, LOL, but maybe not. Okay, do you think modern artists can ever be finalized? It all depends on who the instructor is. It all depends on the instructor. Instructor A might go, okay, this is the art. Ping, 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 ping. Instructor B might not. Now, it was funny. My wife was telling me this the other day. She said, my students they're driven nuts because I change things.
Yeah.
Has the art finalized? No, the art hasn't finalized. My own art, what I teach, and it's really funny because, what I teach, what I call the MA-80 system, Arnis Eskrima. Okay, MA-80. In 1997, I sent a fax to Professor Remy. I petitioned him to form my own subsystem of modern Arnis. Why? Because I wanted a curriculum. I wanted certain standards to be held in my school. And he granted me permission. And then later on, to avoid the who's on first ruckus that happened when the old man died, I just kind of went, well, the old man allowed me to formulate my own subsystem. Okay, I'm going to call it MA-80. MA meaning modern Arnis. 80, that's the year I started in modern Arnis. But also MA has another meaning. I believe it's Tagalog. The term Masid, Arnis, study
Yep.
of, research of. Okay, 80, 80. You turn 8 on its side. It's the symbol of infinity. Now, Professor Remy, when he would teach, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. And he would show this example. But when you surprised him, he was direct as all hell. And it was like, okay,
this is mine now.
The possibility of anything reduced to the simplicity of 0. The instant response. So MA-80 means that as well. Okay, so going with what Chris is talking about, and what my wife had mentioned, my guys, I drive nuts. I changed the curriculum. Well, my curriculum has not been finalized. Okay, I have gone from teaching modern Arnis in the manner in which it was. You have the 12 basic strikes. You have the 12 blocks. You have the 12 disarms. You have this. You have that. You have the next thing. I've transferred that over to a motion-based template system. 4 modules. Each one is motion-based. Module 3 is, good. How does this translate to empty hands? And when I look at Professor Remy being very direct, and then also looking duels in the Philippines, my concept is A, the flow, B, let's get practical, C, one of the things Professor Remy had always said to me is, Danny, if you can counter the counter, you will not be beaten. And so my system leans heavily on being able to counter the counter. Now, the thing is that, my guys weren't flowing in their development as early as I wanted them to flow. So I had to change the teaching platform. Now, the other thing is that, I also tell my guys that 97% of Filipino martial arts is what I call cool shit. 3% is the fight. Okay.
Yep.
White through black belt, I concentrate on the 3%. After you make first degree black belt, we're going to get into some cool shit. We're going to get into locking. We're going to get into this. We're going to get into that. But until then, if you're playing with a stick, what I want you competent at playing with a stick. And all the rest of this folder roll, which, by the way, I really love the folder roll. I think this is great stuff. I love it. But it's not the fight. Okay. So getting back to Chris, can modern Arnis ever be finalized? Well, it all depends on his teacher. Now, his father, Bruce, he has what he teaches in Arnis International. But then you've got Roland Rivera, who teaches in, I believe, Charlotte, North Carolina, or thereabouts. They share the same core, but are they going to agree on what modern Arnis is in its finality? And I bring these two guys up because they're great friends. This is the same thing with Brian Zololinsky. It's the same thing with Bram. The same thing with Kelly. Are we ever going to agree that, thus and such is modern Arnis? And no, you'll get whatever instructor wishes to finalize and say, okay, this is modern Arnis. But to be perfectly honest, it would be, okay, this is Dan's modern Arnis. This is Brian's modern Arnis, as opposed to this is modern Arnis. So will it ever be finalized? One teacher to the next, perhaps.
And it's interesting because to define a thing, for one, you need to have the progenitors swear off on saying, this is it. Here's the mission statement. Here's the proclamation of all the things that I have laid out, what is and what is not. And that requires a dedicated curriculum. And also that relies on the instructor, for one, being alive long enough to say this, that, and the other, not change. That's the big one, not changing their opinion, thereby not adding or deleting stuff. And that's the consistent problem we find in martial arts, not just FMA, not just smart or niece. It's just this issue of, without the progenitor saying that this is exactly what it is, here is the mission statement, it's interpretive based upon the generations thereafter, because without a clear defined leader's policy, leader's intent, mission statement, you just don't know. Where you see that, though, is in dedicated curriculums, again, for agencies and for military organizations and for law enforcement organizations, because they have to be, because it's being taught to a wide variety. But as for a martial arts community that does this as a hobby, does this as a something that enriches their life, it's interpretive based upon what they want, what's the why, and what's the end state. And better yet, it changes throughout their time. So
and especially with Remy, Professor Remy, he was always in a state of flux.
Yeah.
Always in a state of flux. And okay, Chris Chu, Dan, what would you say your belief was Remy's mission statement for modern Arnis? He said this over and over and over again. He wants to spread Filipino culture.
There you go.
He wants to spread Filipino culture. That was his mission. He wanted to popularize Arnis, back in the Philippines. Okay, Eskrima, Arnis. That was a dock worker, thug, PR thing. Arnis had crap for PR. Judo comes in, Taekwondo comes in. The Filipinos love judo and Taekwondo. Why? Well, they got these nice little outfits and they've got these really cool colored belts and they're marching up and down in a gymnasium. It was orderly. It was civilized. People weren't getting their heads beat in or stripes being busted up by people cracking them with sticks. There weren't these back alley brawls. But the thing was that Professor Remy fell in love with the art. Now he comes to the United States. The United States, wonderful melting pot of martial arts: karate, kempo, taekwondo, judo, jiu-jitsu, kung fu. And this art that he loves, he wants to spread. So the concept is, I want to spread Filipino culture. That was the mission statement. The thing is that what a lot of people like to sit back and say, well, what Remy really wanted. So no. He got what he wanted. He didn't want to set up an organized white through black belt curriculum. He didn't want a home dojo. He wanted to travel from area to area, make the cash, spend it here, buy that. He did exactly what he wanted, and he got what he wanted. Okay, It's what we want. I wanted a home dojo. I wanted a curriculum. I didn't get the home dojo. I didn't get the curriculum. But what I got the art. And, I think a more accurate question would be, what is my mission statement? Okay. My mission statement is to make as clear cut the instruction of Remy Presses through my perspective, because I 100% believe there is no reason why you, me, anybody cannot become as skilled as Professor Remy. The thing is, you gotta understand it the way that he understood it. And if he didn't tell you how he understands it, okay, then in the words of Kelly Ward, you gotta do your own work. You gotta figure it out yourself. So that is my mission statement. It's like the most recent video that I released. It's called Single Motion Disarms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I will use this as, aside from a shameless plug, I will use this as an example of the research. Okay. Anytime you learn to disarm, the guy strikes and then he holds the stick out and you get to take it away. Well, nobody's going to play a Statue of Liberty play when they're hitting at you. No. You're either going to cut, they're going to recoil, they're going to slam. So you have to find out who can you disarm, who you can't disarm. Okay, good. Now, disarming on the fly is a whole lot different than having the person hold a stick. Okay, well, Remy Presses could disarm on the fly. How could he disarm on the fly? I don't know. I didn't ask him. How can I replicate it so that anybody can learn it? Bingo. That's my mission statement. And you like it, you don't like it, you buy it, you don't buy it. I don't care. Because my thing is that, okay, I'm an American. I do not look at cultural longevity. I do not look at the existence of the style. Who's going to take it over when I die? I was not raised that way. What I was raised by is that, okay, we have instructional books, we have videos, we have ways that people can access information. Okay, that's Dan in the 20th and the 21st century. So my legacy, okay, in terms of my mission statement is put all that stuff out there so that you don't have to figure it out yourself. Let's save yourself some time. Let's let the FMA martial arts nerd, and I say that very proudly, let the nerd do all the so that you can benefit. So, did Professor Remy have a mission statement? Spread Filipino culture. Spread Filipino culture. Does Dan have a mission statement? Yeah, let's take the mystery out of this. And I see you've got the online library up on the screen. Yeah, that's how I do it. And I am A, not afraid of the written word. B, I'm not afraid of the camera. So I will put out things that, so that you can make your art better. I mean, I was such a martial arts nerd, not just karate, martial arts. I was such a martial arts nerd that I wanted to understand it all. And after 57, going on 58 years, I have gotten down to a lot of the bare bones of a lot of things. Now, do you need to take 20 years to understand it? No. Let's understand it right away so that you can take 20 years to perfect it. Or better yet, 10 years to perfect it. Or better yet, 7 years of dedicated practice to perfect it. That's what I'm about. That is exactly what I'm about. So
that's a beautiful process. And when people don't get there, no, I'm not going to say that, because we've been saying that everybody's journey is their own. So the fact is, we are, one, learning a curriculum if we want to achieve the curriculum standards. Two, we're learning for the fulfillment of ourselves in this intellectual, artistic, hobbyist attraction. And three, there's the other side, because there's the absolute imperative, because we have to, either by bond, by oath, by profession. And that changes depending upon the person.
And it changes depending on where you are in your journey as well.
Yeah, I'm retired. I'm no longer a soldier. I have stopped fighting because of TBI and getting and all a bunch of other stuff. So I am no longer utilizing martial arts as a profession for one as an athlete, as a soldier, or as a business owner because I don't have my gym anymore. What I can be as a martial artist for the sake of I can be a content creator, I can be a interviewer, I can be a student. So what I can do is I can learn the curriculum and I can take as long as I damn well please. So,
Right, right.
and this is the thing, and talk about like longevity and legacy. I talked about this issue about dedicated schools. Do you have to have a dedicated school for the art to grow?
You know, in one way, yes.
Okay.
Let's say if you are a hands-on and you want to disseminate to a mass amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's easiest if you have people that you're sitting there working with right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, in one way, yes, but we are in the 21st century. We can reach others in ways that you don't in a dojo, such as, okay, I teach in Gresham, Oregon. Okay, outskirts of Portland, 100,000 people. When I came here, it was 24,000 people. All right. I contact people now via the internet in Australia. I've got an interview coming from a gentleman, Wim Demir, in Belgium on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I've got book buyers in Hong Kong. I have people in Europe. So the thing is that if we were looking at, let's say, up to 1980, 1990, maybe 1995, I would say absolutely yes. You'd have to have a dedicated school. You'd have to have people who are under you so that they can go out and start their own schools and then teach people under them, etc.
The franchise model. Yep.
Either a franchise model or
Affiliate.
affiliate, etc. Yeah. And that was the model that was prevalent, and that was the very workable model at that point in time. Man, now you can't restrict it to that model. You can't say that is the only valid model because, I mean, you're in Alaska, right?
I'm in a little town called Homer, Alaska, the ass end of the Kenai Peninsula. Population of 7,000 people on a good day.
Yeah. So hypothetically, I could be teaching you right now, spreading my art to you right now while you're up in Homer, Alaska. Okay.
Yep.
A new game has started.
Mm-hmm.
Equally as valid as the old game. Mm-hmm. So, do you have to have an on-site dojo or a long-standing dojo? Yes, but no. Yes, if that is your inclination. No, if that's not.
Yep.
And because you can reach other people, man. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing online classes now.
There's a certain elitism and this issue about credibility and certification and
yeah, you froze there for a moment after certification.
Authenticity when you have a school. It's still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I'll edit that out. Yeah, so this issue in the past has been having a dedicated school is the highest form because you are a dedicated business owner, successful enough to have brick and mortar. You have students underneath you. That is like the certification, the authenticity. That's the overall you are the guy. Mm-hmm. However, if you can't pay the bills, then you're not the guy. So there's this question
welcome to COVID. 40% of the schools in the United States shut down because of that. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that I shut my school down for the circumstance was different, but fortunate enough that my school had shut down before COVID, so I didn't have to deal with that. But with that, though, there's this question about is it legitimate if you don't have a school? Because you got people teaching in the park, you got people teaching in the basement, in the garage, the backyard, and they have a great online presence, but they don't have a school. And there's this dynamic of school owner, this is the way we did it by institution, versus the guy who pops up on the internet.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to answer a question with a question.
Okay.
Who's the king? There's no king out there. So the thing is that who is going to say that you're legitimate or not? Who is going to make the adjudication and be able to make it stick? Nobody's the king out there. And, you know, one can sit back and make very valid, astute observations. The guy's checkhand is never up. You need to keep that checkhand up because of blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But maybe the guy is teaching a blade art and he's not going to put his hand where it can get cut. Or, you know, if you're the king, good. Yes, you can strike down somebody with impunity and say that they're not legitimate or they aren't doing the right thing. But hey, we're in the internet age. We are in the communications age where I can talk to somebody anywhere on the planet if they're willing to get up at that time, or I'm willing to get up at that time. Mm-hmm. And who is to say different? You know. And now, if you're part of an association, so let's say I'm part of the American Backwoods Ninja Association, and my teacher is Henry Hank. Mm-hmm. And he looks at my teaching you and he goes, Dan, that's not very good American Backwoods Ninja. Okay, Henry Hank is the king because I'm part of this association.
Yes.
But, and I rely on him for authenticity. But if I'm not part of Henry Hank's organization, you know, my own phrase is good. His criticism and $5 will get me a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And there you go. So, you know, for others, I can't speak. I know that for me, match what I've done. Match Super Dan's record. Match my karate. Match what I've done in FMA. If you can match that, we'll sit down and talk.
Body of work.
But until
body
then,
of work. Yes.
Yeah. But until then, you can't. You want to criticize Kelly Worden? Fine. Match what he's done. You want to criticize Brian Z? Good. Spend 27 years in the penal system on the right side of the bars. Mm-hmm. Check. You want to criticize Lauren Christensen? Good. Be an MP in Saigon and a street cop for 20 years. Mm-hmm. You match that, yeah, you can talk to him. But until then, sorry, Charlie. Yeah. Whatever you say, and $5 will get me a cup of coffee. So that's my answer to that. And it's you know, and as you can tell, I'm in this manner. I'm opinionated, but I'm very secure in my viewpoint.
Again, it's the body of work proves.
Yes.
And the fact that their body work is very public, and you're comfortable in that. I mean, the tape does not lie. You can't take away your time in the ring and the proof of what you've done in the ring or in the field or on the street. And what's interesting, though, is dealing with this overall, the king of martial arts, king of FMA, without a regulatory body. Who's to say, aside from association, but across the board, who's to say who's in charge and who's better? Because I doubt, because this has been brought up multiple times in this podcast about having a national, let alone an international FMA regulatory body to determine and leading to like a governmental regulatory body, seeing if that is actually a means of which we can have a consistent standard across the board for ethics, accountability, professionalism. In certain arguments, we don't want that because obviously we don't want the government telling us more than it should. But this other one is a meritocracy by virtue of value and what you contribute to the community and proof of work. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And you know, here's the thing. I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen.
No,
it's not
I don't want it to happen.
Because number one, anytime you involve another human being into it, you're going to get a different perspective.
Yes.
Number two, there's no money in it.
No.
There's no money in it. Man, if there were billions of dollars into this and people are getting paid and so forth, oh, you'd find regulations left, right, and center. You'd find standards left, right, and center. But when you get in as small a niche as martial arts, it's not going to happen. The cash is not there. And you start involving people, no matter how much you and I agree on something, we're going to disagree on something. And we're both going to be equally valid. So yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's all a pipe dream.
Yeah. So speaking of body work, it's an hour and a half in. And for my audience who are new to you, who are you, Professor Super Dan Anderson? Because like I said, an hour and a half into this, we haven't actually talked about who you are.
Oh boy. Okay, I will attempt to keep this short. I like to say I'm a kid from a town of 24,000 who made good. I started karate in 1966 at the age of 14. And it was something that my mother thought would be, 6-month fad. In November, it'll be 58 years later, and I'm still going. I started out as a failed baseball player. I adored baseball, but I would choke at the plate. I would choke. And I wasn't anywhere near as good a fielder as I thought. My coach told me that I was a utility player. I didn't find out that until later the utility player was somebody that you stuck somewhere hoping they would do the least amount of damage to the team. That was me. So, when I found karate, I took to it like a duck to water. I mean, it was just something that was just amazing. And I dedicated myself wholeheartedly. I made my black belt in about 3 years, and in about 4 years, I started being known in the Northwestern competition. And I went from being a regional champion to a national champion, and then finally a world champion. It was for me, it was a meteoric rise. It was something that really, really spoke to me. Now, so here I am. I'm about 14 years into my karate, and I'm strictly a kick and punch guy. I meet Remy Presses, and I didn't meet him in the normal sense. When I met Remy Presses, I was trying to blow this guy off. A very good friend of mine, Fred King, was trying to introduce me to him, and I couldn't understand him. I was only into kick punch. What is this Arnis thing? No. I don't want to do this. So he finally does this little demonstration with me. He says, it's about how he's been, some guys try to mug him in the freeway in New York. And at this point in time, I don't know if I physically rolled my eyes or if I spiritually rolled my eyes. I know definitely internally I rolled my eyes, and I'm kind of going, please find me a rafter, find me a rope. I'm going to hang myself right here. That was my viewpoint at the time. Sorry for being so cocky, but the story is better when I was cocky. And he demonstrates this one particular move. It's a wrist escape. You see it in jiu-jitsu. You see it in Aikido. You see it in all these different things. And then all of a sudden, it's like the light goes on over my eyes because I'd been fighting so many years. I'd seen all kinds of confidence. I'd seen Jeff Smith walk in and own the room with his presence. I've seen Joe Lewis, kind of the hard guy, bad guy. I've seen blustery type of confidence. Well, he executed this move with no thought in his mind that it wouldn't work. I mean, it was above confidence, right? And luckily, I spotted it. It was like, oh, I better watch this guy. So I go to a seminar the next time, and it was just like, oh man, it was just as much a duck taking to water as I did with my karate. And the modern Arnis opened up the whole world of martial arts to me. I already knew my kick and punch. I was already extremely talented and very well done in the karate. Okay, this opened up the rest of it. And so, 57 and a half years later, am I a karate man? No. Am I a modern Arnis man? No. Am I a martial artist? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And this is where I came from. Now, what I've done since then, or since the beginning, was back in 1980, I wrote a book called American Freestyle Karate, A Guide to Sparring. And back then, karate books were either self-defense, historical, or they were primers. There was nothing teaching how to spar. So it was the book that I wanted to read, so I wrote it. Next thing I know is I've got guys telling me, says, Dan, are you sure you want to put all your secrets in there? And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, do you think this is all I'm ever going to learn? But instead I'm going, no, it's cool. It's cool. I started finding out that this is a book that is being used in dojos as required reading material. And I'm kind of like, whoa, I'm amazed. And I put everything I had into that book because at that time on my day job, I worked as a printer and I knew how much it cost to print a book. So I thought, okay, this is my one shot. This is my one shot. I am hitting it with everything I've got. And as it turned out, of all things, I wrote the way that I spoke. And people loved that too. They loved exactly, I wasn't coming from this point of altitude or high science or whatever. I was Dan talking to everybody else. And the book communicated. And so when we fast forward to the internet, the beginnings of the internet era, okay, in 2002, I met a gentleman by the name of Mish Handworker. And I met him at a modern artist clinic. And I was talking to the promoter, I would really like to get into this electronic format type of things. And she goes, oh, you need to talk to Mish. Well, Mish was a geek. And I say this lovingly because he taught me how to do electronic books. And then I morphed them from there into video production. And he helped me there as well. So what ended up happening was I did the first modern artist book that was not done by Professor Remy. And then I started a series of modern artist books and a series of karate books. And the nice thing about online printing or online publication is that, good, I could use others to proofread, but I wouldn't have somebody editing what I said. I ran afoul of an editor on American Freestyle where I had this section on timing, okay? The section on timing was right during the offensive approaches. Good. Well, you want to know about your timing on offensive approaches. When are you going to go? When are you going to move? When are you going to hit? Well, the editor put this way back onto page 213 as an additional concept. And I didn't notice this until the book was printed. No! That section was totally ruined. So when I rewrote the book, I put it in its proper place. Well, I swore nobody was going to edit any of my books ever again. Nobody was going to do whatever kind of placement. It was going to be exactly where I wanted and where I saw I needed it. So since then, between books and videos, I've done over 100 units. I've done over, over 40 some books. And I mean, once one book ends, the doorway opens for the next book. We're the same thing with the videos. And so I've done this, big online presence that backs up the Super Dan presence. And we keep saying Super Dan, so I got to tell you this really quickly in terms of who am I. Back in the ancient days when dinosaurs ruled the world, nobody had nicknames. And I had won a tournament, and the writer of this tournament was also part of the same karate association that I was in, knew that I liked comic books. And I was a DC guy. I wasn't a Marvel guy. Okay, consider me square. And so, in Black Belt magazine, we have this writing, and young Super Dan Anderson, as he is being known in the Northwest. It's like, what? I was livid. Super Dan, it's got to be the dumbest thing you ever heard. And, I complained to her, and her opinion was, Deal with it. It's in print. And so it's like, steam is coming out my ears. And I didn't like this nickname until I was at a tournament when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, Super Dan." But I listened to the tone of voice, and it was with respect. It was like, wait a minute. Just like in CB radio with truckers, I've got a handle. This is my nickname, Super Dan. Wow. Well, this was before Bill Wallace was Superfoot, or Howard Jackson was the California Flash, or Jeff Smith was the DC Bomber. I was Super Dan before anybody else. So, with all the books, with all the videos, with all this and that, good interview with Super Dan or Professor Super Dan. The term professor comes from a karate promotion that I received back from the American Teachers Karate Association. And that was at 7th Dan. I was entitled professor. So I like that better than sensei or sifu or sabanem because I'm an American. Okay, professor's cool. Professor's good. In my school, the kids call me sir because they can't pronounce professor. They're professor, just call me sir. So they all call me sir. But this is where the nickname Super Dan comes from. This is where the title professor comes from. Generally, when I'm teaching at seminars, I'll just say, okay, whatever your tradition is, you can call me Dan, you can call me sir. If you have an overdeveloped sense of propriety, call me your worship. And that usually brings about people laughing, and that takes any tension down as to what to call me. Except I do have 2 people that call me your worship, and they do it very tongue in cheek. And so, anyway, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I've been doing martial arts nearly 58 years. This dojo here is it'll be 40 years upcoming in March, and there you go. So, what's your next question? I'm on a roll.
Well, that's a short history. You've been at this a little while. It's interesting talking about the golden era of American martial arts coming out of the 60s and 70s. Because my adoptive father is part of that era. He fought at the Long Beach International several times. He's an American Kempo guy. He was part of the American Kung Fu Association, later the Taekwondo. But it's like listening to him and his stories of like guys on basketball floors going full tilt and seeing the damage thereafter. It's amazing. Is also brutal to watch because the amount of times my dad's nose has been broken. But it's also, what's interesting is the evolution of martial arts through competitions and the development of the distinction of different styles of sparring. Because like the Taekwondo guys getting pissed off and say no more punches to the head because the boxer showed up. And it's really fascinating to have somebody who's been there, done that during that time frame and actually get a chance to talk to them.
Well, it's interesting because when the Japanese came over and they were doing the kumite, they were doing the free fighting. Okay, what you saw was a lot of front kick, straight punch. Mm-hmm. Now, what people don't know is why front kick, straight punch. Well, there was an article by Graham Noble where he's talking about the evolution of Shotokan karate, and the thing is that during World War II, they brought in a couple of different masters. Okay. Goju-ryu was too slow. They brought in Aikido with Ueshiba. Okay. Ueshiba was great, but the guys couldn't get it that quick. They brought in Otsuka from Wada-ryu. Okay. That was nice, but that was too light. Okay. They bring in Shotokan. Okay. Yeah. This can be learned fast, quick. What techniques did they do? They did shin kick. They did shin kick, punch in the mouth, front kick, straight punch, right? And so when they exported it to the U.S., okay, the kumite was good, front kick, straight punch. Well, I remember Gary Lee was asking me about, okay, so what was the birth of American karate or the American karate tournament scene? My opinion, the birth of the American karate scene was the first time they called Mike Stone hitting somebody with a ridge hand. Ridge hand was not front kick, front punch. And I think he probably knocked the guy out. Okay, well, the next thing is that, okay, somebody decks somebody with a round kick. Joe Louis decks somebody with a back knuckle. Chuck Norris nails somebody with a spin back kick. Now, what you start getting effective moves done by certain practitioners, and then if you had one technique one week, the next week was how to counter that technique.
Yeah.
Then the next week was, okay, how do we work around this? And the growth of American karate, and this is what I came up in, was astounding. Black Belt Magazine. I learned spinning back kick from Chuck Norris in an article, Technique of the Month. Chuck
So you
Norris.
don't need to be hands-on to learn the thing, is what you're saying?
I learned the technique from a magazine. Fake the back chop. The guy goes to the block. You spin, you hit him with a back kick. I asked my teacher, Lawrence, when I was demonstrating the spin back kick, and I go, so is this how it's done? And I know by the look on his face now that he had never seen the move. He just kind of, something like that. It's like, okay, low, high round kick. John Natividad comes off the back leg, throws the low round kick to the groin. He doesn't put his foot on the floor. He just bends his leg. His knee comes up. Ping! He hits the guy in the head while both hands are down, protecting the groin. Man, I worked on that. Bill Wallace. One chamber, looks like a sidekick, comes around with the hook kick. Yep. Yeah, all these development, fadeaway ridge hand, Texas ridge hand, the ridge hand that starts in Oklahoma, ends up in New Mexico. Somehow your head got in the way. Yeah, it was rugged. And this is what I grew up with. And this was magnificent. The growth from, I would say, 1965 to 1980 was astounding. And, and I got to be part of that. And this is like at the very beginning of when I was talking about one's perspective, one's skill set, and using that skill set to absorb modern Arnis. This was the skill set that I was used to, having to learn, having to adapt, having to make my body move in certain ways to not only keep with the competition, but to become one of the elite in the competition. In my early days, up through like 1974, I was rated in the top 20 in the nation. Okay. Top 20 among the black belts. This is not in the lightweight division, not in the welter. This is all the black belts. And then when I was rated in the top 10, this is all the black belts. Not top 10, not world champion in the light featherweight division. This is 10 out of everybody. And in order to get to that point, you had to have a certain skill set. You had to have a certain adaptability. You had to, your observational powers had to be very acute. One of the things I tell in martial arts seminars, advanced karate, advanced Arnis, advanced martial arts. It's not advanced physical ability. It's advanced observation, observational ability. Then you work by concepts. You can have the greatest kicks in the world, but if your timing sucks, you ain't hitting the broadside of a barn. You could only throw front kick to the shins, but if your timing and distancing is acute, nobody's going to beat you. So, but
late, earlier on time.
Yeah, exactly. And now, let me give you the cherry on the frosting on the cake. Okay, the two major mistakes in timing: too late, too soon. What's the hidden bitch? What's the hidden mistake? Lack of preparation.
Yeah.
If you use that split-second timing to bend your knees so that you can launch, you just blew the timing. Your timing was impeccable, but the preparation ruined the move.
Yep.
So that lack of preparation, that's the one where people really blow big time. Anyway, that's a nugget for you. That I'll send you the bill later. But but yeah, growing up in that time was marvelous. And then you back that up with learning under Professor Remy, who did not do body contouring,
Mhm.
who did not say, this is the way that it has to be done. That went hand in glove with the evolution of karate for me. And this is where I was able to extract the most out of Professor Remy that I could, and came away with an art that transformed me from being a karate boy to a martial artist.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's unspeakably awesome. It was wonderful.
Because what comes to mind is the art in general. The combat sports in general evolved at the speed of competition. Just like the past 20 years of the GWAT, we evolved as a military force at the speed of war with consistent reps. And this is the thing that is the debate consistently between the preservationists, who are theoretical often, and then the innovators who are competitive, who actually are testing this stuff all the time and are able to glean what works, what doesn't work, and distill down to the basic principles, moving beyond the concepts and the minutia of a technique-driven approach or curriculum.
Right. Now, the interesting thing in terms of the preservationists, if you look at any of the founders of any of the Oriental martial arts, they did the same blasted thing. Get a reprint of Karate do Kyohan by Gishin Funakoshi and check his stances in the kata. Now, go to YouTube, not YouTube, but go to the internet, Google up the name Yoshitaka Funakoshi or Gigo Funakoshi. His third son, Gigo Funakoshi, expands the stances, brings in more dynamic application of the techniques. Essentially, Gishin Funakoshi did Shorin karate. You know, he brought karate to Japan to make Japanese karate. Okay. All of the old masters, they evolved the art as well. The only now we're going to go into personal theory, and I will state it as such. Okay, the Japanese bring the arts to America. They don't want their students to train in Shotokan and Goju-ryu, let's say, as an example, or Kenpo karate at the same time. Oh, no, they're doing it wrong. You must do it this way. I think, and maybe one of these days I'll research it enough to prove it or be proven wrong. I think it's closer to an American business phenomenon. I really, really do. And Americans, wonderful people that we are, having a culture of MTV and McDonald's, latch on to any culture foreign to ours, and unfortunately, we become worse. We become more Japanese than the Japanese. We speak in pidgin Korean, blah, 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 because we've got this non-culture culture in America. Like I said, McDonald's, Burger King, and MTV, that's our culture. And I found out about this the first time I went to Germany. I go to Germany. There's this church. It's got a placard erected 1110. That church has been standing longer than my country has been alive. There we have culture. Then I went to Saudi Arabia. Utterly, utterly foreign culture to me. But they had their culture. Next thing I know is when I'm traveling, all these places have their own culture. I come back to the States. McDonald's, MTV. So this whole preservationist thing, my opinion, clearly stated as such, is much closer to an American business model. You have a Japanese sensei. English is his second language, and the way that he speaks English, it might as well be his 32nd language because he sucks at it because he didn't grow up with it, and he doesn't want to lose the students. My way, the proper way, the only way. Sorry, Funakoshi sensei did not do that. Funakoshi's teacher, Azato Sensei, and Itosu Sensei didn't do that. Their teacher, who I believe was Matsumura, I may be incorrect on that, didn't do it that way. They changed with the times. And so anyway, if you're going to be a preservationist, again, more power to you, but that's not the only way. That was just the way that you were taught. That was the only way.
Right. And again, there is beauty and value for a preservation of the art, because the fact is, for historical artistic standpoints,
Yes.
The risk that we run into is when you have the strict adherence of it must be this way. It's the issue of stagnation is death, leads to obliteration and assimilation into a homogenous society, therefore becoming obscure and irrelevant.
Yeah, so that won't happen in America. America doesn't.
Won't happen. Americans don't do that because Americans are too young, as you stated before, and as it's widely understood, because the amount of appropriation, melting, and all the things that is the odd shit show that is America. But the fact is, as a culture, we're an amalgamation of cultures, and so like this idea of trying to Americanize and maintain a preservation of what American culture is, that's a tricky question. And then when you add something on top of it, like Filipino culture, because that's another one, Filipino culture is adaptive like every other culture. So the question arises, as a student of a Filipino martial arts master from the Philippines, from the 60s, teaching it to you, and thereby you, a Caucasian American, teaching FMA to the community in general, and dare say Filipinos, I run into this question often, and it's uncomfortable, but have you had any resistance, success, and found a way to work around this issue about, hey, Mr. White Man, why are you teaching me about my culture, bro, in particular to FMA?
Nobody's ever brought it up to me.
Oh, okay.
The fascinating thing is that, and here is when it was really, quote unquote, nobody brought it up to me. 2 points. Number one was I was at the FMA gathering in San Francisco in 2001-ish or 2002. Elric Jundis was the point, was the point man for that. Yeah. And I was one of the few honkies there that was actually teaching, and but I was teaching. I was welcomed. Remy Presses Jr., unfortunately for me, got the demonstration slot. Okay, he and the family demonstrated modern Arnis, but I got to teach there and so forth. And everybody was cool. You know, I met Darren and a number of the other guys, and they were all just very welcoming. Then I went to Tagaytay in the Philippines in 2006 to teach at the Third World FMA Festival, as well as the first Remy Presses Memorial Festival. And I remember reading a book by Mark Wiley, and Mark had mentioned about how a lot of times over there that even the Filipino grandmasters refuse to acknowledge other Filipino grandmasters. And so I'm thinking, okay, and mind you, I'm thinking with a Japanese, Okinawan, closer to Japanese concept. And I'm thinking, okay, so I trained really hard thinking that, okay, when I go there, if I have to throw down, I'm going to throw down, and I'm going to be ready. I am going to be absolutely ready. Well, I get over there, and man, it's like I'm a cousin they haven't seen in 20 years. Yep. It was wonderful. I go to the Third World FMA Festival. Okay, we got people there that don't know me from Adam, but Armando Soteco, Christopher Ricketts, a number of instructors. And oh, by the way, when I went over there, I took every class. If I wasn't teaching, I was training, which I think surprised a number of people. And then when I was at the the first Remy Presses Memorial gathering, just accepted like a little brother, like a brother. And so I haven't run into anybody pulling the culture card on me. And, you know, I suppose if somebody wanted to play the culture card on me, the best way to do it would be just, okay, let's play. And if we play and we want to play nicey nice, good, we can play nicey nice and we can exchange the values of each other. One of the things that I do get across is that as an American teaching in an American school, I do not teach a culture that I was not raised up in. So I'm not going to say, okay, this is the Filipino culture and this is how you're going to learn. No, this is Arnis. And this is the manner of moving and striking with a cane and empty hand, etc., that was taught to me by Professor Remy, processed through Super Dan's brain cells. But will I be teaching the culture? No, I don't know the culture. You know, if you want somebody to talk about the culture, okay, talk to Dieter Kanoodle. Dieter has been to the Philippines many times. Talked to Tim Hartman. Tim Hartman has spent a buku bucks traveling the Philippines to trying to get immersed in the Filipino culture. Don't talk to Dan Anderson about the Filipino culture because I don't know it. And I will be very upfront about the difference between what Dan Anderson does and what I perform. Now, you want to talk about Dan's performance. Okay, now we're on a totally different ground here. And I will back up my performance, my viewpoints as to why I do this, that, and the next thing. I will back that up immediately, readily, pretty much in any fashion that you want to. But I don't profess to teach what I don't know. And as I said very early on in this interview, I'm an open book. I'll tell you what I don't know. Do I know Filipino culture? Absolutely not. And so will I teach it? Absolutely not. Will I teach you what Remy taught me? I will teach you how I took what Remy taught me. And if I get somebody later on going, let's say, just as for fits and giggles, he would always say, used to drive us nuts. No matter where you are there already. What? Have you been reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull or something? Come on, Dunny, it is true. No matter where you are there already. But my stick was down. You are there already. No, it was down. It should have been up. Dunny, it is okay. No matter where you are there already. Finally, the light bulb comes on over my head, which is no matter where you are, there's always an option.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Now, is that what the old man meant? I don't know. He never said it that way. That is how I take it. That is how I perform it. That's how I teach it. And if somebody else has a different way that they processed it, or if Professor Remy said to them, this is how it is, good. Here's a little tidbit. Do you know that Professor Remy never defined modern Arnis?
Okay.
In specifics. The closest thing that I could find was in shucks, I'm forgetting the name of the magazine, but he was saying that, well, you have modern English, you have modern mathematics. These days you have modern Arnis. Bingo! That was it. He never even defined it in print, in video. Modern Arnis is pinkety, 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 pink. So how is somebody else going to say Professor Remy thought that modern Arnis was yada, 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 when you cannot find any documentation that he said modern Arnis was thus and such?
Drop that mic.
You're talking to the researcher who has researched everything. I research like a mad dog because I adore research. I adore clear-cut definitions. And if the clear-cut definitions do not exist, I will make it up and use it as my clear-cut definition.
Because you're a professional and you have integrity.
And simply state it as such. So anybody who states something else differently, as long as you put it, this is my perspective, I will bow to you just because you said it was your perspective. But if you say that, Remy said, yep, 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 and who knows, maybe Remy said it in private, but if it wasn't broadly disseminated, sorry, it wasn't probably broadly disseminated. And in the long run, my art's my art. If Remy were back now, I would love to go one-on-one with him just to see how far I've come. Yeah. And he would know. In fact, I'll tell you why he would take this with a smile on his face. I did a Letterman stupid pet trick one time with him where we were doing a drill and I disarmed him. I don't know where the disarm came from. Where's ding, 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 ding. And I'm going, oh my God. Inside my mind, I'm going, what the hell were you thinking? You weren't thinking. You are going to get your ass handed to you. What does he do? He looks at me, he goes, Danny, that was very good. But you forgot one thing. I am left-handed. The cane was in my right hand. He takes the stick and he goes, ting, puts it in his left hand. We start doing the drill again. And he hands me my ass. But he hands me my ass by timing, positioning. He did not put a whooping on me. What he ended up doing was going, Dad, you've reached this level. You know that there is this level? And he was showing me gradations of excellence. So, when I say that, if he were alive today, first thing I would do is in private, I'd go one-on-one with him. And I'd give him everything I've got. If nothing else, to A, show me what else I had to learn, but also B, show him what I've been doing in the time that he had been missing. And I bet you dollars to donuts, he would smile and he'd do something like, Donnie, the cane was in my right hand, here's in my left hand. And it would be all good fun. Or he'd just pat me on the back and say, well done, boy, you did good. Or he'd whack me one, I don't know. But it would be all good. But, going back to the, like I said, exact definitions, I've got my own exact definitions. Remy has certain inexactitudes that really, in the long run, opened the door for each one of us. You've got Kenny Smith, who now has his modern artist MATS. I think it's seminars or system modern artist trainings systems. Okay. Mm-hmm. He would not have had the open door had Professor Remy not taught the way that he taught. And you have any of the seniors, including my favorite internet critic, you wouldn't have those avenues if Professor Remy said modern Arnis is bang, 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 and having a curriculum that went bang, 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 bang. And then you wouldn't have certain things such as me being able to be influenced by Ted Buat, who was Anchon Bakon's #1 guy, or Mark Wiley, who I don't know if you've ever met or been around Mark, but this guy's a gold mine of knowledge. Or even just recently, when I was talking about single motion disarms, right? Well, that came out of Mark Wiley and Bruce Chu.
Yep.
Bruce Chu has a standard of no matter what you do, it has to be executed during motion. If you cannot execute it while the cane is moving, you're half a step behind. And I'm listening to Bruce while he's talking to the crowd, and I'm going, damn. I should have, So had Professor Remy really standardized things, that door would not have been open for Kelly to do what he's done, for Brian to do, for Roland, for Bram, for Bruce, for Dan, for insert your favorite name here. And because he left the door open, I think modern Arnis is much better and much more complete system, even though the differences between the aforementioned individuals, the way they go about it, there's no way it's going to stagnate. No way it's going to stagnate. Yeah. And so maybe there was a genius behind his madness. I don't know. Maybe that's what he thought was going to happen. I don't think so, because all the times I talked to him, he never spoke that way.
What it sounds like is that he's given the permission for one to explore and the permission for one to actually take the blinders off and actually pursue what they like and make excellent of which they choose. Because the problem we run into is
bare minimum.
Yeah.
By the way that he taught, he gave tacit permission.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was expressly expressed or
Mm-hmm.
not, because he didn't do this, he did do this. So yeah, he gave tacit permission for Kelly to do what he does, for me to do what I do, for everybody else to do what they do. It was like, I mean, he didn't say it, but by his actions, by the way things were set up, there was definite tacit permission. Yeah.
Which leads to the situation where there is not a dogma that one must adhere to culturally. Because the thing on the other side of it, of a innovator with that influenced American martial arts, is Bruce Lee. The idea of there is no style. The fact is, there is now such a dogma and rhetoric attached to, like, what is the definition of no style? And has created a messy circumstance that the interpretations thereafter is problematic, and has actually created the exact opposite of what was intended in his written word.
Yeah, well, let's take on Bruce Lee here for a half second, because style. There is no style. Okay, sorry. English is Bruce Lee's second language. He had a misdefinition, but so did all the other Japanese when they came over. Okay, the term, let's say Shorin Ryu, okay, comes from the term Ryuha. Okay, that means school. So the Japanese come over. Oh yes, I do Gojuru. It is the Goju style. Oh, they're using the wrong word. English is their second. They should have been saying it was the Goju school, but the Americans take the word style, and make that into system, that into school. No, everybody's got their own style. Look up the word style. It is a manner in which one performs something. Country music is a style. Rock is a style. Jazz is a style. Oh, take a look at jazz. Oh, you have bebop as a style. You have cool as a style. You have fusion is a style. Okay, so for Bruce Lee to sit back and go, oh, there is no style. Horseshit. There is, because Bruce Lee's style was a style. It was a manner in which the way Bruce moved. Now, there is no dogma system, would have been much more accurate.
It's not a sexy phrase.
To what Bruce Lee was saying.
It's not a sexy phrase, though.
No, it isn't. And it wasn't Bruce Lee with and my favorite Bruce Lee quote, "Wah!" That was my favorite. But the no style thing. And then when you get into FMA, you've got the curriculum, you've got the Serrata Eskrima, method of moving and template of learning. But at some point, you're Jeff Finder, and you move like Jeff Finder moves, and he may move a little bit like Jimmy Tokosa. And does Jimmy Tokosa move like Mark Wiley? I don't know, but Jimmy moves like Jimmy, and Jeff moves like Jeff. And yes, they had the same common root. Or Darren T-Bone.
Oh yeah,
the same common root, which is Angel Caballas. But now you've got Darren's style. Darren's a big boy. I haven't seen Darren move in decades. I bet he doesn't move like Angel, because he's not as little as Angel. Yes, you'll see the core. Or if I remember Jeff Finder, I believe he's rangy. I believe Jeff Stickman Finder. I know Jimmy Tokosa is long-limbed. Okay, he's not going to move like Angel. Well, Kelly's not going to move like Professor Remy, and neither is Bruce. And you get Kelly, big boy, Bruce Chu, little guy. So yeah, each has their own style, but do they have their own fixed curriculum.
That's a big one.
And the fixed curriculum is great for that first stage of handling the chaos, which is combat. You move out of that fixed curriculum until you are finally, you've found your own voice. You know, nobody could say that Brian Zawlinski has not found his own voice. Nobody could even come close to saying that I have not found my own voice. Kelly, his own voice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but anyway, sorry about my rant on Bruce Lee.
No, this is great.
I just wish they'd keep him off the covers and let him stay gone.
What is great in all of this is this FMA martial arts evolves, and people need to remember that it evolves, because the fact is we're consistently reinventing the wheel and forget about history and the past, and the fact we're trying to do this in the forward and moving to the future. So having conversations like this to remind us, especially somebody who has such a wealth of knowledge in history, as short as it is as yourself, to explain this because you've been there, done that, and seen the evolution of American martial arts and FMA. Because again, FMA is in another transition because everything's being done online, because we have such an ecological peer review system now and immediate with online. And conversations like this is removing the myths of fighting in the jungles, doing and all these myths that were before, and half the times are legends and lies. So with online plus the access of actually going and doing the thing, there is, I mean, you can't lie in the ring, you can't lie in the cage, you just can't. So that is important. And what is curious about it, though, is in this idea of an online space, it leads to a lot of people who can do this, but also leads to the situation where a lot of people just comment on the side, and if you're not doing, then what are you doing? And this is where again, with sport karate back in the day, where you guys fought and figured it out and developed it at the speed of combat, this is where I think FMA is still kind of in its transitionary phase, where there's quite a few people fighting and figuring this stuff out, say like the Dog Brothers, say like any other method of combat, sport and expression and experimentation. But I find across the board with a lot of FMAers or single background is that they don't spar enough, and so they get stuck in this rhetoric and dogma.
It's it's funny because the sparring is a bit of my viewpoint. Okay, the sparring is a bit of a North American phenomenon. What you had was the mini drills, or like when I was learning from Ted Buat, he would do what I call situationals. Okay, so the guy struck this way and you countered that way, but was that the best kind of counter? Okay, let's do this again. Let's get the timing on it. Blah 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 blah. And now you get into a less dueling society, okay, which is replaced by the sporting venture. Okay, so we don't get into the big dueling fistfights anymore. So we get into the competitive ring. Now, the same thing, with FMA, with it being a stick thing, whether it's a padded stick, real thick stick, whether it's Dog Brothers, my term, free for all type of thing, or whether it's with the weak half, pseudo armor. It's finding its position. But the thing is that in terms of the sparring, at one point in time, it was dangerous to spar. Now, I'm not saying in the USA, I'm saying in the Philippines, it was dangerous to spar. Next thing you know, I remember Remy Presses falling afoul of, oh God, what's the name of the guy? I can't think of his name, but the guy was Delphine Lopez. Yeah, okay. So he's training the school, and he's with Delphine Lopez's nephew, and if I remember right, there's a little bit of a challenge thing. So he splits his eyebrow and basically gives him a little bit of rattan therapy. And next thing you know, Delphine Lopez is going to kill it. And so Are they playing? Yeah, so they're sort of kind of playing. Bam! The guy's blood all over the place, split eyebrow, etc. And then the uncle gets pissed off, and he's got to hightail it somewhere else, otherwise he's going to get killed. And it has gone from, let's say, that point down a little bit in the US, where, okay, now let's pad this stuff. And when you do the padding and the sparring experimentation, you take a little bit of the danger out of it. Okay. I'm all for taking the danger out of it, but you gotta watch out, because you take the danger out of it, you take the reality out of it. Now, my handle to this is good. I use padded sticks. I don't use any gear. You hit a bone area, I will acknowledge it. You hit me in the meat. Hey, you hit me with the meat, you hit me in the thigh with a stick. I'm going to need 2 beers, one to drink and one ice cold one to stick on my leg as an ice thing later on. But it's not going to stop me. You hit a bone, you're going to affect a defang, or like I remember Rocky Pazic was telling me about his first stick fight. And I think with a Pikiti guy, and the guy broke a bone in his ankle. He went to the basement, pow, broke a bone in his ankle, and that was it. Fight done. Okay, so when I play, like with my guys, it's like, okay, good. If you hit me, good, fight's over. Now we'll start a new fight. So it's not going to be a point game. It's going to be fight over. Why? Well, that's kind of how real it was in the Philippines. Now you get into the sparring situation in the States, where you've got, let's say, an adopting of the American point karate situation. Okay, good. First person to 5 points. Or you get the weak half thing, which is the cardio blitz multiple domination thing, which could very well end with no pads, with the other guy whacking him, and you have no defense, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it has to sort itself out. And yeah, I totally agree with you in terms of FMA being in this transitional phase to get to a point where either there are 2 or 3 or 4 different styles of competition, because the Dog Brothers, they're not going to play point karate. They're not going to play point stick. No, they're into this helmet, elbow pad, stick hand pad thing. And God bless them, they're rugged as shit, man. They're rugged.
It's a difference between like Kyokushin versus UST Taekwondo or Olympic Taekwondo. Yeah.
Well, Kyokushin and WKF karate. Okay. Japanese style, but Kyokushin is one thing, WKF karate is another thing. And the 2 games go like this. Okay, good. You like Kyokushin? Man, you're a rugged son of a gun. More power to you. You want the WKF timing cardio blitz and explosion blitz? Good, that's your game. FMA's having the same type of thing. And only if you roll it all back to warfare or fight application can you say that, well, this sucks and this is good. No, it's what are you going to do? Are you going to play Texas Hold'em, or are you going to play 5-card draw? 2 different games. You're going to play blackjack, or you're going to play baccarat. 2 different games. Well, it's all gambling, But if we're talking about winning and losing money, well, one game might be better than the other, etc. It's the same thing with judging it by combat, So.
And this is where I run into this issue of what is the definition of FMA? I mean, it's a little tongue in cheek, but it matters. And then the other is I often title my videos is it FMA? Because in lieu of a curriculum, but as fluid as FMA can be, there's question as to what is, without defining what is FMA, anything can be FMA. So
that's an interesting question, because the thing is that let me throw a question back at you. What is a car?
Exactly.
Let's go back to 1920. That was a car.
Yeah, that was a car.
Does it compete with the 65 Mustang? No way. Okay, now we get later on, and I'm going to use American Point Karate as the example. Okay, now Does the electric car compete with the 65 Mustang?
Yeah.
Well, the electric car, okay, well, we got this higher technological thing, but that 65 Mustang is going to blow it off the track, you know.
Dedicated versus battery life. Yeah.
Exactly. So we get American point karate in present day, and it's not the game that I left. So being an old man, I can bitch about it all I want. Okay. The timing and the physical skills manipulation is very, very good. But is control wrist deep like in the old days? So can they hit like a 65 Mustang? And, you know, I sit back and I go, no. But that could be the old codger in me complaining about the new game. And I will use that. I got to find this quote one of these days. It's in one of my boxing books where it says, the only thing that old sports writers and old boxers agree on is that things aren't as good today as they were in the old days. You know, so and I always have to quote that to reference to me about the old days. But the thing is that, you know, FMA finding definition. Okay, Filipino martial arts. So either you can like look at Filipino as the culture or the source, in turn, and then Filipino martial. Okay, good. What was being done in the Philippines, or what is influenced by the Philippines? And then art. You can like look at art in terms of either a craft skill or means of personal expression. So with a multiplicity, with the exception of the word Filipino, there are too many alternate definitions for the word martial and arts. So the thing is that, and it boils back down to finding your own voice. Good. So, Kurt, tell me, what's Filipino martial arts? You're going to tell me from your perspective. And if your perspective doesn't match my perspective, well, then we have a guy in Gresham, Oregon, and a guy in Homer, Alaska, with two different perspectives, with two different viewpoints. And each of those and $5 will get you a cup of coffee because each is equally valid.
Exactly.
Bingo.
And this is, again, the reason why in tongue-in-cheek I name the majority of my videos is it FMA, because it's based upon the interpretation of what I think and leads to the conversation what other people think.
Correct.
Because the thing we run into with the nomenclature of Filipino is the issue of like how far back in history do we want to go, and therefore what influence do we want to say is specific in which region. It's messy. And when we try to pigeonhole stuff because of making things easier for the mind who doesn't want to go in all the tangents, this is where we run this issue about simplifying, because we want curriculum, we want structure, we want to put things in boxes so we know this is the thing. And what that does is it limits a person from having the theme that I'm finding in this episode is limiting the person to have the freedom to have their own voice, the freedom to ask questions, and the freedom to discover, because that is really the lasting impression that I find from the non-tyrannical old men is that they're done as soon as they're dead. Let the next generation figure that shit out afterwards. But they have to have the freedom. They have the next generation has to have that personal freedom and the enlightenment of saying, maybe I can go figure this shit out.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching a video today, or listening to a video, I should say, and it was great. It was the Beatles Part 1 in their own words. So they're quoting the different Beatles and the musical influences that they had and so forth. Well, what you get is they're listening to Buddy Holly, they're listening to Roy Orbison, they're listening to Elvis Presley. Okay, you have a certain kind of music. They get into pop music in England. Okay, they work out their craft, and then they get up into the point before this interview. They were talking about doing Sgt. Pepper's. Now, how do you compare Elvis to Sgt. Pepper's? Man, those are two different styles of music, you know. I mean, and then let's take it further just for fits and giggles. Okay, so you get Sgt. Pepper's, but how do you morph from Sgt. Pepper's into King Crimson. And you get King Crimson into Tangerine Dream, electronic music. It's like what you get is you get the influences, you get the innovation, you get the continuing on. Yes, you have the classics.
Mm-hmm.
Right now on the touch style guitar, I'm learning a Bach piece, the cello Prelude 1. I'm not into classical music, but man, is this a fingering exercise from hell? This is a great training thing. But people have continued since Bach's time. You take a look at jazz, born in New Orleans, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into, I finally read the other day, what made bebop music, bebop jazz, so revolutionary? Well, jazz was dance music up until then. You Count Basie, Duke Ellington, the swing. All of a sudden you get Yardbird, Charlie Parker. You get Dizzy Gillespie playing these runs at incredible speed. Nobody can dance to that crap. All of a sudden, we have this revolutionary thing. And then what does Miles Davis do? He comes in and chills it out with a little bit of cool jazz. Then they morph into hard bop, which is kind of a halfway between cool jazz and bebop, and then pulls in gospel, etc. Then they go into early jazz rock, progression. What kind of music do you like? I can't get into speed bebop of Charlie Parker. It doesn't talk to me. Talk to me about early Miles and Thelonious Monk and Max Roach. Get into jazz rock. Oh, we'll talk all day. Get into progressive rock. We'll talk all day. Get into current pop. I'm locking the door and shutting the blinds. But it's all progression. It's all taste.
Yep.
Martial arts is no different. Do you want to do hard style kata for the rest of your life? You do. Do it. It's great. It's good. You want to do Filipino martial arts the way it was done in 1930 when Doce Pares was a group of guys getting together, beating on each other. Do it. You want to do WECAF, stick fighting with all the pads and become the human armadillo swinging sticks. Do it. It's the progression, but it pulls down to taste. It pulls down to the art within your art. Whose art? My art? No, it is not the art within my art. It's in the art within your art. And if you talk about the art within your art to me, good, you're talking to me as my art. How does it speak to me, etc.? And curriculums are there to build the path, to get you to where you want to go. You want to learn how to improvise? Good. Learn your scales. Learn your tunes, play with people. At a certain point, the music's going to come out of you. You know, music, martial arts, music, painting, martial arts, writing. Danny, it is all the same. You know? It's human expression. It's human expression. It's all the same.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can't think of any other point of which to end this podcast on that, because that's beautiful.
Thank you. So, it is what it is. And so there you go. So in ending the broadcast, oh boy, we're going way over what I thought we did. This is a
right
talk. Yeah, it's been about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to put out there? I'm going to throw your website back up here.
Yeah. Aside from go to my website and spend lavishly. I've got a birthday coming up in 6 months, so spend lavishly. Again, like I had mentioned earlier in the broadcast, is that my goal and my purpose is to make it easier for you. Simply say, make it easier for you. You don't have to go through all the research that I went through. And I adore research. I love it. So it's been a personal, wonderful pleasure. But at the same time, anything that I can do to help further your art. And if you're going to get in touch with me email wise, okay, Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Lee, L-E-E, Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N, Danny Lee Anderson at hotmail.com. tag with me, because the reason I have gotten to the point, there's a great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar quote, which I am going to misquote for all of you. And I've got the magazine here somewhere. But any reason that I have been able to stand out is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. And so, since I have had mentors, I have had people that have taken the time to talk to a 14-year-old boy who is intensely interested. And I was able to get to where I was able to go. I mean, remember, I tried to blow off Remy Presses. I tried to, I was like, I can't understand this guy. Would somebody take him somewhere else because I just want to do karate? If he had the patience to wait until I was done being an egotistical karate boy, to be able to demonstrate part of his art, and then in the long run give me his art. And yeah, I paid for seminars, but trust me, if I paid $10, he gave me 1,000 to give me his art. I could do no less than pay it forward. And so if anybody, the last word is that anybody wants to, get in contact with me and they have a question, I'll answer it as best as I can. And then accept or reject as you will. And then we'll go out, we'll share coffee after that, whether we're in the same physical locale or not. Yeah.
Awesome. And again, thank you for the gift of your time.
Absolutely.
The continued work and the work that you have done carrying the torch forward and sharing that with us. Because again, without those who came before us, we won't have the knowledge. We'll just have to figure this shit out the hard way moving forward. So again, wise man learns from the mistakes and the discoveries of others. And so thank you for that.
And thank you for having me here. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm going to drop you down, do our outro, and just hang out in the lobby, and I'll be right back.
Bingo.
Alrighty. Well, folks, that was a short episode. I say that. But anyways, that was a great episode. I learned so much, and actually it's a real treat, because talking to a gentleman who actually has had such longevity and also it's been in the same circles of my upbringing, say like my family's upbringing, it's a real treat. So with that, I want to thank Professor Super Dan Anderson for being on this show today. Also for the continued work that he is doing and carrying, like I said, carrying the torch forward. If anybody has somebody they want to have on the show, message me. I'm more than happy to have a cool conversation and meet a new friend. So yeah. Anyways, not a long outro, because anyways, have a great day, folks.